AskReddit by Sideline. Serious, what are some discoveries or inventions that were stumbled upon purely by chance and would still likely be undiscovered today if not found through sheer luck? Attention. Serious, tag notice. Jokes, puns, and off-topic comments are not permitted. https://www.reddit.com/r//wiki/index-wiki_rule_6 in any comment parent or child. Parent comments that aren't from the target group will be removed, along with their child replies. Report comments that violate these rules. Posts that have few relevant answers within the first hour, and posts that are not appropriate for the serious tag will be removed. Consider doing an AMA request instead. Thanks for your cooperation and enjoy the discussion. I am a bot, and this action was performed automatically. Please contact the moderators of this subreddit. Message compose $?2 r AskReddit if you have any questions or concerns. The House of Flini Hypogeum in Malta is a 5,000-year-old Neolithic temple which has 3 levels of architecture carved underground in the limestone. It's a World Heritage Archaeological Site, and an amazing place to visit. It had been buried for maybe a couple of thousand years, and was discovered by accident in the early 1900s by someone digging out foundations for a house. They finished building the house before getting around to notifying authorities what they had found. https://heritagemalta.mt/explore/hal-saflini-hypogeum/right square bracket open bracket https://heritagemalta.mt explore House-of-Flini Hypogeum. This is amazing. I am fascinated by ancient human society, but I've never heard of this site. Thanks for sharing. The current use for Viagra. It was originally meant for high blood pressure, then the men in the study noted a side effect. While effective at lowering blood pressure, it was in a weird place where it was better than a placebo, but worse than actual blood pressure medication. However, it's still sometimes prescribed to help control blood pressure. The one I heard in chemistry class was that this chemist put some chemicals in a flask and placed a mechanical stirrer in it to stir overnight. The next morning the stirrer had stopped stirring and he found the chemicals in the flask was solid and thus ultra-hard polycarbonate polymer was created. Okay, since my post is rather popular, I will also add that the guy who found that the stirrer was stuck in the solid polycarbonate polymer in the morning broke the glass off the flask off, then went around the lab holding the stirrer handle with the polycarbonate polymer mass on it and banged on the tables around the lab saying, "Look what I discovered." Here's one that most people won't know, an audio effect called gated reverb. It was an accidental discovery made by Phil Collins and Hugh Padgham while they were working on Peter Gabriel's third self-titled album in 1980. The effect thickens up the sound of the drums considerably by applying, in order, a reverb, a gate and a compressor. It was the result of the studio having a natural reverb, and the intercom between the studio and control room having a gate and compressor on it to make it more usable while the effect was used on Gabriel's album. It became truly known a year later, when Collins released his first solo album, Face Value, which opens with "In the Air Tonight." The effect is what makes the crescendo of that song so stunning, in contrast to the comparatively dull sound of Roland CR78 that was the sole percussion in the track up to that point. So basically they heard the drums behind the intercom and were like, "Wow, that's so cool." I'm not sure if this counts, but Tetsuhiro Shikiyama, founder of Nippura, the company that makes thick acrylic glass for aquariums, invented the tech that fuses multiple layers of clear acrylic when he dropped a Uten noodle he was eating on some acrylic and had a hard time picking it up because it stuck. God, I hope he didn't eat that. Rubber vulcanization. Charles Goodyear has searched for years how to make a use of rubber, but the actual discovery of the vulcanization came out of luck after spilling a mixture on a hot stove. Wasn't he considered a total weirdo for his obsession with rubber, which everyone in his life thought was a waste of time? And he didn't live long enough to see his discovery become a huge success. It's pretty cool how X-rays were discovered, totally by accident. Wilhelm Conrad Röntgen, a scientist from Germany, was playing around with something called cathode rays. While doing his experiments, he noticed something glowing on a nearby screen coated with chemicals. He named this glowing stuff X because he didn't know what it was at first. Later, we found out that X-rays can go through soft stuff like skin but get stopped by harder things like bones. So, by chance, Röntgen stumbled upon a way for us to peek inside bodies without cutting them open. It's now a super important tool in medicine. If Röntgen hadn't been curious about that strange glow, we might not have X-rays today. Cheers to accidental discoveries. Also, just as an added fun fact, in German, we call X-rays Röntgen, after the inventor. It's unlikely it would have remained undiscovered forever, but X-rays for medical imaging. The first X-ray image was an accidental exposure of a photographic plate the scientist's wife was holding. They didn't realize the rays would interact with it like visible light, and when they developed it, her bones and wedding ring were visible. This may have been the first clue they needed some safety precautions, too, but honestly all the early research into ionizing radiation is terrifying. They didn't know what they were dealing with. The Curie's lab offices are still tightly controlled due to all the radium and polonium contamination, for example. Champagne. At least according to Stanley Goodspeed and the rock monks thought they were making white wine. Somehow the bottle carbonated. Voila, champagne. Often attributed to a blind monk named Dom Perignon. I'm surprised I haven't seen this one yet, but LSD was discovered on accident. Or at least its psychedelic effects were. In 1938 a chemist named Albert Hofmann who worked for a pharmaceutical company was trying to synthesize a respiratory and circulatory stimulant from the fungus ergot. After synthesization, he set it aside for 5 years before he took another look at it and absorbed the LSD into his fingertips. He started feeling the effects as he rode his bike home that day, essentially being the first person to trip balls on acid. And Bike Day in the 19th of April, celebrating that discovery. During World War II, a chemical engineer named James Wright was working for the US War Production Board. Wright was attempting to create an inexpensive substitute for synthetic rubber at the General Electric lab. In 1943, while working on an experiment, he accidentally dropped boric acid into silicone oil, and the result was a stretchy substance that was bouncier than rubber. Peter Hodgson, a businessman, saw the putty and instantly knew it could be a hit. He renamed the creation Silly Putty and marketed it as a toy in 1950. Source: %20 a %20 toy %20 in %201,950. I had a book of discoveries by accident when I was younger. It was terrific. Chocolate chip cookies, potato chips, post-its, penicillin, microwaves, even pacemakers were all made by mistake or happened upon as a discovery. The potato chip is maybe the best story. Guy goes to a restaurant and orders crispy potatoes. Like really crispy. Chef says fine, whatever, and makes crispy potato slices. Guy sends them back. This continues on for a couple rounds until the chef gets pissed, very thinly slices some potatoes, and fries them in some oil. Guy decided they were perfect. Microwave oven. Guy working on radar had a chocolate bar in his pocket and it melted. You probably heard this already, but penicillin was discovered by accident. That's typically a case of by chance, is really more about how the story is told. There were already some previous work who noticed some interesting properties about this family of fungus, and that just wasn't making big news. And then Fleming randomly found it again with a bit more details. This kind of random is right in the we would have found it a bit later otherwise category. The microwave oven. Relevant Tom Scott, https:// Yao2.be/2tdiktsde9y si1javlhryu of c5ig close bracket. Inkjet printers discovered by accident when a Canon engineer set a hot iron next to his pen, only to find moments later that his pen has begun to leak ink. Viagra. Artificial sweetener. Few others I can't remember off the top of my head. Basically a lot. Things just happen and people go, oh that's neat, I wonder why. Imagine getting your Viagra and your sweetener mixed up. I don't know what you put in Johnny's birthday cake, honey, but he's been in his room for 2 hours now. There is a great sci-fi short story by Harry Turtledove about this. Basically anti-grav faster than light travel is surprisingly easy and most alien races stumble upon it very early on. Like Roman Empire era early. It's just that obvious and easy. Humanity is a weird exception, never figuring it out even into the 21st century. The technology makes life so easy, the other races basically stop developing for centuries. They have no need for steam engines, railroads, jet travel, etc. Once they start traveling between stars, they invest so much effort into perfecting their FTL travel that their other tech never advances much. So they are basically all stuck in a sort of colonial period, colonizing other planets rather than continents. They then stumble upon Earth, and detecting no FTL activity, assume it is primitive and the perfect target for colonial exploitation. https://www.iofmidas.com/sci/turtledove_ode_not_taken.pdf. Thanks for posting that story, I remember reading it many years ago. Penicillin gotta be one of them. Guy had his to now be the cure left open while he went on a vacation, and once he came back, he noticed that the mold was suppressing the growth of bacteria. We probs wouldn't be alive if he didn't go on that vacation and leave the dish open. Not just that. He actually dumped them in a cleaning solution before he left. The one that survived was on top of the pile and didn't touch the solution. That's when he noticed it as he got back. Maybe not undiscovered till today, but probably good time later. Dry cleaning. The way I got told there was an French chemist who did regularly experiments in the kitchen and got into trouble regularly with his wife. One day he did his thing and spilled some stuff and used one of the towel to clean up to prevent more discussions. The wife then discovered the towel was much cleaner than usual, and so dry cleaning. Bird migration. Was discovered when a large bird was found in the north with a projectile from the south stuck in its neck, I think. Before this, it was thought the birds hibernated at the bottom of water bodies or flew to the moon or other dumb shit. We'd probably have figured it out by now with GPS trackers, if for some reason we ignored all the reports of certain birds appearing in certain locations at times when similar looking ones disappeared after flying into their general direction of those locations. The entire field of paleontology, by definition. Czochralski process, the baseline of modern electronics, as nearly all of the electronics nowadays are made on silicon grown with this process. Guy wanted to dip his pen in ink, he dipped it in a crucible with molten tin instead. Stainless steel. A batch of steel got contaminated, so it was dumped. Someone noticed the dumped steel wasn't rusting. The Precambrian Ediacara fossils in Australia. They were discovered in 1946 by mining engineer Reginald Sprigg, who habitually looked for fossils wherever he was. Although there had been mining in South Australia's Ediacaran Hills since the 1880s, nobody had looked for fossils there before because 1. Much of the rock was sandstone, not the best mineral for preserving invertebrates. 2. The formation was Precambrian, which was considered earlier than Earth's first multicellular life.